Okay, thank you for listening this far. Now I will move on to the theoretical framework. And the point here is that it's kind of easy to say that things are constructed or constituted or fabricated or whatever, but it's what's often missing, I think, is a description or explanation of how this actually happens, how it comes, how things are made. And I think this, you need to analyze different stuff, different things in different ways. Like if you want to understand how an airplane is made and made to work, then you need one kind of analysis. You need to look at certain things. If you want to understand marriage, for example, that's a sort of different analysis. Even though you have the same basic idea that this thing is not given by nature or given by God or whatever, they are different, and you need different ways of thinking to understand them. And this theoretical framework, I think, fits well for mathematical knowledge in particular. Like it could fit with other things as well, but to me it seems that this is the kind of tools for thinking that can be really useful to understand how these properties are kind of brought into existence in modernity. So the idea here is that a certain type of activity, that is called ritual, the ritual form of practice or action, generates a certain message about how the world is and how people are and how people relate to that world. And after having explained the relationship between the ritual form and its message, I will focus on two different kinds of messages. And then I will move on to two special things in the world that, according to this theory, are often kind of part of the message. I've taken this theoretical framework from this one book by Roy Rappaports, an American anthropologist, and the book is from 1999. So the ritual form, the definition of the ritual form has 5 parts, and the first part of the definition says that a ritual activity is an activity that has been defined beforehand. The performers of rituals do not specify all the acts and utterances constituting their own performances. They follow, more or less punctiliously, orders established or taken to have been established by others. So this is Rappaport's way to put it. And of course, when I present these parts of the ritual form, the idea is that, or what I will do later is to show that this fits rather well with mathematics education. And this should be clear for this first part of the definition. That teachers and pupils, when they enter the mathematics education classroom, can only partially use their own judgment regarding what to do and what to say. There's a lot pre-established in the setting. So it kind of fits with this definition. The second part says that this kind of action is invariant and stable. It's geographical invariant and stable in time. It has always, in quotation marks, been performed in more or less the same way everywhere. So this too goes for education in general. The classrooms look pretty much the same everywhere in a national context like Sweden, or more generally in modernity, which is sort of the thing that I'm trying to understand here. Modernity in a general sense, where there is an education system. And the third part of the definition says that this kind of activity is punctilious and repetitive. So it takes place at a special place according to a special schedule. And this is sort of typical for school. There are schedules, and schools are placed almost like prisons. That's another institution that's similar in this way. It has its own rhythm, its own rules, its own context, and they are often repetitive, these activities, and this goes for mathematics education. You get questions and you answer questions, and that is basically what you do. This is a small paradigmatic act of answering a question that is repeated in time with different contents to these questions. They get more and more difficult, and the reference to the questions shift all the time, but still the form of this act is pretty much the same. It's constant in time, it's geographically invariant. And the fourth part of the definition says that ritual activity is something that is performed. So it's not something that is just written down or described in a book or a manual. It's acted, it's performed, it's enacted. So, and this of course goes for mathematics education. It does not go today for classical education, for the classical languages, for example, which was once a massively present ritual in the West, or for religious rituals, which are still here, but maybe not, well, obviously not as much as before, and schooling is one of the, is sort of a central activity in modern culture today. That may change, of course, but still, like it's the ritual of today, you could say, going to school, among other things that we also do. So they are made real by being performed. That's how Rappaport puts it. And the fifth part of the definition is the most difficult one, and it opens up a lot of questions. So there's something that is odd with the ritual activity, and it's not only that it's odd; it's that everybody knows more or less that there is something strange going on with ritual activity. It has a non-obvious relationship between intended and actual results. So the way I have tried to describe this here is that rituals produce with their material, obvious effects, messages saying how these effects should be interpreted. These messages say what the world is like and where and how people stand in relation to this world. So this could be, for instance, a grade that you get in school. It's a small material result. It's just a mark on a paper. But this imagery of what this mark means amplifies it. So you can talk about a sort of narrative amplification. The mark is put into a story about what it means. So since this mark indicates how much knowledge of mathematics you have, and since the message says that mathematics is everywhere and it's powerful and present, this mark becomes very important. But even though this imagery is like presented confidently and is grandiose and everything, it's connected to a sort of ambivalence and doubt. It's not obvious that this is actually true, that there are, like, that this mark actually represents knowledge that is actually there with the properties that it's supposed to have. So we have this critical discussion of mathematics education, for instance. So it's kind of it's difficult to say exactly what's going on here, but something is going on that makes this kind of activity and the meaning that it has different from everyday acts of doing things like riding a bicycle. It's just very unproblematic that you do it, and it is riding a bicycle. It's nothing more to it. The rituals are different here, and it's part of the definition that it has this oddity with it. So, moving on now to the messages, and to try to kind of make this clear, I've tried to identify what message, why all these points are important for generating the message of the ritual activity. So I have 5 points in this second column, and Rappaport doesn't present it this way, but I try to do it that way because I think it makes it clear why all these 5 points are necessary. Starting with the pre-givenness of activity. This sort of makes ritual activity seem like a part of nature. Like it's already there, you cannot change it, and you are powerless when faced with it, and you have to accept it. That's not something that's in the definition, but it's usually an important aspect of how the place of rituals in society, that they are there and you have to participate in them, because otherwise bad things will happen. So if you do not go to school, if you do not care about school, bad things will happen to you, more or less bad things. If you do not let your children go to school, the police will come and get your children, things like that. And you do not usually even consider not participating. So a metaphor that I think works is that this ritual activity is sort of like a rigid shell which you have to adapt yourself to, in a similar way as like the rest of the world. It's just part of the world that's there. And it's there in that way for everybody. Everybody meets ritual this way. So it kind of creates a common expression of the nature of ritual, that it's obvious, and it's very difficult to kind of problematize it or question it, because it's so obvious. Then, since it's stable and invariant, the experience of participating in ritual activity is the same for everybody. And it's also kind of the same between generations. So it's something that is shared, a common experience, a common knowledge about what ritual is. And the message of ritual, it kind of contains entities and substances and processes in the world that says that this is why ritual needs to be performed in exactly this way. And since it's invariant and stable, that kind of makes these claims trustworthy, because ritual is everywhere the same, and that makes it seem like these entities and processes and substances are actually there and are actually kind of demanding the same thing. And this is exactly how education and mathematics education in particular works. Like we have it everywhere in the same way, and it seems like this is the case because mathematics is present everywhere, and mathematical knowledge is needed everywhere, the same kind of knowledge, and learning is performed in the same way. That makes it seem like you need to do this to learn mathematics. So it's a very important part of the ritual activity that it's invariant and stable. Otherwise, it would kind of constitute a very local ontology, like this is how the world works right here, but in another place where there are different rituals, it would seem like the world worked differently. So it's important that it's kind of like all-encompassing, the ritual activity. Yeah, this is what it says here in these points. It's a common experience. And it's important that this common sense, this common experience needs to be repeatedly enacted to become present. It's not just there. It seems to be just there, like a part of nature. But the idea of this theoretical framework is that work sort of needs to be performed to make it seem obviously there. So that's how a ritual works. And this punctiliousness and repetitiveness that is performed in a special place according to a special schedule, this separateness of ritual activity makes it possible to enact a particular logic of the world. So this idea of learning, for example, it's a very special idea that is enacted, and it could not really like be enacted as part of everyday activities. So it needs a special place and needs to be supervised and controlled and regulated to be able to be performed. But it can be performed in schools, and so there at these particular places, this structure of the world, these properties of the entities of the world, are enacted exactly as they are supposed to be. So the logic of practice follows, it seems, the logic of parts of the world. And since it's separate, since it is separated from the everyday and from other rituals, it can be very precise. It's precise and the same everywhere, and this seems to reflect the non-negotiableness of the underlying causes. That is, I think, a good way to put it. The message becomes insulated from contradicting experience in other uncontrolled settings. And it's repetitive, so you kind of get the message. When you are in school, you get the message of how knowledge works, how learning works, because you do it over and over again, and it's difficult not to understand how it works. Like you can think whatever you like and feel whatever you like, but you understand through practice what learning is. It's something that you do in the classroom. And then the fourth part. Just continuing what I said here in relation to point 3 is that you act this out. It is performed. It's not something that you read in a book or something someone tells you, like, there's mathematics out there, or you need knowledge, or learning is something that you learn through problem solving and things like that. It's not said, it's done. And you do it before anyone tells you why you do it. You start school when you're very young, and this goes for rituals in general. That the message is transmitted through action, and it is participation that is the important sign that you accept the message. That's how it works. So when you participate, you act as if you believed in certain things. Or you, maybe not as if you believed, you act as if the world was in a particular way when you perform ritual activity. And this is kind of the way this message about the world is present. It is present in the activity of people participating in ritual activity. In practice, you participate in the revealing of how the world is. As far as you are powerless faced with the movement of your own body, you are powerless faced with the logic of the world reflected in this movement of the body. You live the world of ritual. You live this logic of the world. It becomes part of your life. This is how the world becomes as the ritual says it is. It's because people participate in ritual activity. Okay, so the fifth and most complicated point, what's the message of that? Well, it's difficult to separate the form and the message here. They're kind of intertwined. But one way to put it is to say that the failure of the ritual, that it doesn't work, it's already taken into account in the way ritual transmits its message. Like, it doesn't matter. It's no problem for the transmission of this message that it doesn't actually work. So it is generally known, and this is an important point and a difficult point, because when you criticize ritual activity, thinkers often assume that the participants kind of believe that rain dances produces rain, for instance, but they do not. Not in the sense that you can believe that a certain political party is the best party, like that you stand for it. You do not stand for that belief in the same way. Even though you participated in this dance, to take this just very, very stupid example, doesn't mean that you believe in the effectivity of this activity in the same way as you believe that this political party will be is the best one to govern society. So there are two strategies, two ways that this can be taken into account, this non-functioning ritual. And the first one is that you do not really care that it doesn't really work. You do it nonetheless. And this is how we relate to Santa Claus and other traditions in modern culture, Christmas. We participate in the performance, and we thus make Santa Claus to a part of the world, but we know very well that he does not exist in this normal way of that people exist, that and houses and rockets and things like that. They are not real in the same way, but they are present as something that we act out. We act as if Santa Claus existed, but we know that he's not real, that he has no existence. So it's a bit complicated. The other way is to hate ritual for its stupidness and try to reform it. And this is how we relate to activities in modern culture that are supposed to be rational. So school is supposed to be rational, science is supposed to be rational, politics is supposed to be rational, lots of things are supposed to be rational. And if they are not, we recognize that and we need to reform them. So this is how we relate to mathematics education. And I've written about this in an article. It's called Hating School, Loving Mathematics. And it's about this hate-love relationship to mathematics education. You love what it's supposed to do, but you recognize that it does not really work, and then you get frustrated and you try to reform it. So while this first strategy is something that you can generally enjoy, like we have Christmas because we like Christmas. Well, many people do not like Christmas, but we could get rid of it if we wanted to. We think at least that if we did not want Christmas, we would just drop Christmas. But it's not the same with mathematics education. Like we think that we really need mathematics education, but we still cannot make it work. So this is frustrating and painful. So it's this kind of love-hate relationship. I think it's related to what is called in a certain theoretical tradition for jouissance. It's a particular kind of enjoyment that is painful. So we are attached to this activity in a sort of complex and strange way, and that is how I think it works with mathematics education. So, moving on now to the two different kinds of message that is transmitted by ritual activity. So the first message is called canonical, and it's about what is the same everywhere, and it is unsurprisingly transmitted by what is stable and invariant in ritual activity. So it's about what exists, the forms, like science, mathematics, learning, education, teachers, pupils, kind of the categories, the symbolic forms, you could say. It's about the properties of entities and substances and the relationships between these properties. Like you get knowledge through learning, for instance. And there are teachers teach, pupils learn. That's what they do. And it's about the power and value of entities and substances. Like Mathematical knowledge is a powerful resource for understanding and action. That's part of the properties of mathematical knowledge. Then there's the self-referential message. That is about how particular participants in ritual activity relate to these eternal and everywhere present entities and substances that has these particular properties. So in mathematics education, the most fundamental self-referential message has the form of amounts and qualities of mathematical knowledge. So it says how much each particular pupil has of this entity or substance that is constituted as part of the canonical message. So the self-referential message is transmitted by means of the canonical message, but it's also the other way around. So the canonical message about what mathematical knowledge is transmitted by means of people having more and less of it. So they are intertwined, but I think it's a very useful analytical distinction that works very well for education, because it's so clear what is the self-referential message. It differentiates between people by means of the entities constituted in the canonical message. And ritual activity makes it clear, it clarifies how much people have, like what they are, how they stand in relationship to the world. They make it material, the ritual makes it visible, graspable. You get the mark is there, everybody can see it, and it indicates what this person is in relationship to mathematics. And since mathematics is part of the world, it indicates how this person stands in relationship to the world. And it does that for everybody. So you get differences that are material. Differentiates. So, moving on to the last part of this second part of the presentation. There are two special parts of the world, two different kinds of sort of entities or substances that are constituted by ritual activity that I've chosen to focus upon because I think they are useful for understanding mathematics education. So the first one is the holy. So Rappaports says that rituals often give some particular entity or substance special significance. And for mathematics education, of course, this is mathematics as part of science. So typical for the holy is that it is immaterial, it has no material existence, but it is still existing somehow. It has some kind of presence, and that goes for mathematics, I think. Like you say that it's present in society, it's present in nature in the form of like the structure of reality or laws of nature. It's powerful. This of course goes for knowledge. And you could say in a way that it's powerful also as laws of nature. It kind of governs the universe. And it is ineffable in some ways. It's not obvious what it is, and it's kind of ungraspable in a sense. And not everybody would agree to that, but definitely teachers and pupils meet it as something that kind of transcends them and transcends the particular situation of the classroom. It's something that other people knew much more about, and that you only see a little glimpse of mathematics. So it kind of fits with this concept of the holy. Then there's another part that's the occult, and Rappaports does not talk so much about it. It's not very central for him, but I think it works well for the modern world and education and science. So rituals often relate to invisible powers that purportedly work in the world, that do things. And I think that it's useful to understand knowledge in this way, as an occult power. So the general mechanism for making occult powers believable is to persistently posit them as the simple and single, invisible underlying cause of effects that you do not actually know the causes of. So when people successfully manage their everyday life, you can say that, well, that's because they have knowledge. And then you make sense of the activity of schooling. Or when we can go to the moon, like that's success. We say that, well, this is because we have scientific method, we have science, we have rationality. That's the reason. Or when we can build cars or do whatever, we just posit these invisible entities, or like presences, like rationality, knowledge, scientific method, science, learning, whatever. And this is kind of our explanatory framework for understanding why certain things work. And when we do that, we kind of posit these occult powers. You can call them occult. It fits with the concept of the occult. And in particular, with education, it's kind of clear how the activity of schooling makes it believable, trustworthy, that this is how it actually works, because this explanatory framework fits exactly with how the education system works.